The soup wasn't just hot. It was scalding. And it didn't spill. It was poured. Deliberately. Slowly. Like a ritual of humiliation. One moment, I was seated at their dinner table, smiling, holding my spoon, trying to belong. The next, I was drenched in mushroom bisque. Her voice came before the burn faded. Beggar. You are of no use. Get out of here. Everyone froze. No one gasped. Not even Derek, my fiancé, who sat across from me, folding his napkin like nothing had happened. His mother, Vivian, stood over me, holding the now empty ball like she would won a war. I didn't move. The soup dripped down my blouse, into my lap, staining the one dress I'd bought just for this dinner, to impress them. Derek finally looked up. And what he said next, that's what truly broke me. My mother always tells the truth. He didn't check if I was burned. Didn't flinch at the cruelty. He leaned back in his chair and added, "She's right. I made a mistake thinking someone like you was worthy of marriage." The silence rung in my ears. From this moment on, he continued, "We're done." Vivian sat down calmly, smug, as if she would swatted a fly. Everyone else pretended not to know me. And me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up slowly, soup-soaked, spine straight. I placed my napkin on the table. Adjusted my coat, wet, but still dignified. Then I looked Derek dead in the eye. "Thank you," I said quietly. He blinked. "For what?" "For saving me a lifetime of regret." I turned to his mother. "And thank you for making your character louder than my presence ever could." I walked out with my heels clicking against marble tile, the soup cooling on my skin but my fury boiling inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. Because they didn't deserve my rage. They only deserved the consequences. My name is Naomi Pierce. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the woman they tried to drown in soup, she didn't burn. She ignited. And the man who thought he discarded me was about to walk into an office that belonged to me and choke on the taste of his mistake. I didn't come from privilege. No trust fund. No family name on a hospital wing. No safety net. Just grit. And silence. My mother was a janitor. My father, a man who ran, from bills, from fatherhood, from us. I learned young that if you wanted a seat at the table, you had to build the chair yourself. With splinters. With calluses. With your teeth if you had to. By 27, I was the youngest coup at a Fortune pound sauce subsidiary. By 28, I'd negotiated to multi-million-dollar mergers that saved the company from collapse. By 29, I was engaged to a man who asked me to dim all of that down. "Babe," Derek would say, hand on mine at dinners, "don't mention work too much around Mom. She thinks ambition in women is aggressive." I nodded. I wore beige instead of bold colors. Stopped leading with my title. Called myself a consultant instead of an executive. I let him hold the spotlight even when I built the stage. I didn't do it because I was weak. I did it because I thought love meant compromise. I thought maybe if I just softened the edges a little, his family would let me in. Instead, they mistook my grace for groveling. I paid for our first apartment. He told people it was a gift from his parents. I coached him through job interviews, rewrote his resume, prepped him on strategy. When he landed a role in the firm where I had quite influence, he never mentioned my name. And I never asked him to. Because I believed in building silently. But silence, I have learned, is only noble when it's chosen. What I had been doing was suppressing, minimizing, enduring. And that dinner, that soup, that public execution, it wasn't just a breakup. It was a revelation. Because the moment Derek sided with his mother, the moment he discarded me like I was nothing but an inconvenience to their designer dinner plates, I realized something sharp and searing. They never feared losing me. Because they never understood who I really was. They thought I was replaceable. Expendable. A girl who looked good on his arm but wouldn't make noise when shoved off. They had no idea that the woman they tried to humiliate was the one signing checks in rooms they would never be invited to. But they were about to learn. Because the silence they mistook for weakness. That was just me holding my breath while the match caught flame. And when it did, it wouldn't just burn the memory of that night. It would brand a lesson into every smug smile they ever wore. The smell of soup followed me home. It soaked into my coat, my dress, my hair. Every step I took echoed with the same words that had rung through that dining room. Beggar. You are of no use. I threw the dress into a trash bag the moment I walked through the door. Not out of shame, but because it was no longer mine. It belonged to the moment they tried to erase me. I stood in the shower, letting the water scald away the taste of humiliation. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my personal vault drive, the one no one knew about. The one with contracts, executive records, company board memos. And I stared at a document that had been sitting there since February. Interim CEO nomination, Pierce, Naomi. I'd never submitted it. I was next in line. The only candidate groomed for the position. But I'd paused when Derek proposed. He told me the role would put a strain on our relationship. He said, a woman in that kind of power position. It changes things. He was right. It changed everything. But not in the way he feared. Now, I wasn't asking permission. I called my mentor, the current CEO. Told her I was ready. She would be waiting for that call. She said the board would meet tomorrow at subah ke 8 baje. And that by 9:00, the position would be mine. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was nervous. Because I was awake. For the first time in months. When morning came, I dressed simply. A navy blue suit, clean makeup, sharp ponytail. No softness. No apology. I walked into the skyscraper like it belonged to me. Because soon, it would. I reached the 37th floor and stepped into the boardroom. 7 men. 2 women. All eyes on me. And when I began to speak, the woman they thought was broken owned the room like a general returning to war, not to beg, but to lead. The vote was unanimous. And just like that, I became interim CEO of the very firm Derek was bragging to his friends about joining. His offer letter hadn't even arrived yet. I had it in my desk drawer. Unsigned. He thought I was still just a consultant. Thought I was a detail to be managed, hidden, discarded. So the next move had to be quiet and devastating. I walked to HR and made one change. Derek's onboarding time was moved from subah ke 10 baje to 9:05. 5 minutes after the announcement. 5 minutes after he'd walk in, expecting to meet the team. And instead, he'd meet me. The woman his mother tried to scold. The woman he threw away like a napkin at dinner. The woman he said wasn't worthy of marriage. And the woman who now held the keys to his career. Because poetic justice isn't just a dish best served cold. Sometimes, it's hot. Like soup. And sometimes, it comes served with a promotion and a smile. At exactly subah ke 9:03, I stood at the head of the boardroom, flanked by executives and department heads. Everyone was still buzzing from the announcement. Naomi Pierce, interim CEO. Some clapped. A few nodded respectfully. But most, they watched me differently now. Not as the quiet strategist behind closed doors, but as the one finally sitting in the biggest chair in the room. I adjusted my blazer, looked down at the schedule. 9:05, new hire orientation, Derek Langston. Right on cue, the elevator chimed. The door opened. And there he was. Derek strolled in like he was still a man with options. Navy suit, confident smile, designer watch glinting under the lights. For 1 second, he didn't see me. He looked past me, toward the board, expecting applause, greetings, a handshake. And then our eyes locked. He stopped mid-step. Confusion flickered first. Then disbelief. And finally, the kind of realization that drains the blood from your face. He opened his mouth. I raised a hand. Have a seat, Mr. Langston. The room went still. No one moved. Because they would heard the rumors. But now they were watching it unfold in real time. Derek hesitated. Then slowly lowered himself into the chair opposite me. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me came to life with onboarding documents, his name in bold. Employee orientation, Derek Langston Junior Strategy Consultant. Junior. He flinched. I didn't blink. As the newly appointed interim CEO, I began, I'd like to personally welcome you to Langford Oaking. A few snickers rippled through the back row. I continued. You'll be working under the strategy department. Olivia Chain is your direct supervisor. Any issues, concerns, or future requests will go through her. He opened his mouth again. I raised my voice slightly.
Any questions?
His mouth closed. Eyes narrowed. Everyone in the room watched like it was a show. But to me, it wasn't revenge.
It was justice, dressed in professionalism.
I dismissed the meeting 15 minutes later.
Most filtered out, trying not to laugh.
Derek lingered. He waited until the room cleared, then finally spoke.
You planned this.
I turned slowly, folders in hand. No.
You did.
He scoffed.
You could have told me.
You could have defended me.
Or at least not let your mother pour soup on me. She was upset.
She assaulted me. You ended our engagement in front of your entire family like I was trash.
You told me I wasn't worthy of marriage.
He winced. I didn't mean it like that.
You meant every word I said was cold.
And now, I mean every policy I sign. Every restructure I approve. Every meeting I lead. So unless you'd like to be escorted out, I suggest you take this job seriously. Or don't. I paused.
Actually, please don't.
I walked past him. But not before adding. And Derek, soup washes off.
But failure. That tends to stick. I left him standing there, his offer letter still unsigned, his ego bleeding quietly in a room that now answered to me.
The man who said I was of no use was now asking if he could keep his seat. And me, I had just begun.
By the end of Derek's first week, everyone at Lanford Oaking had a new nickname for him. The X.
No one said it to his face, but the tension wrapped around him like a second suit. He tried to act like it didn't bother him.
Tried to perform, louder, more aggressive, more eager to prove himself.
But the thing about men who lead with ego, they can't survive in rooms where competence is currency. And my office was the treasury. He couldn't keep up with Olivia's strategy briefs. Missed key metrics in meetings.
Recycled language from old decks, my decks, and passed them off as fresh.
Worse,
he talked down to female analysts in brainstorming sessions, assuming they didn't know their numbers.
They did. One reported it to HR.
Another, Jenna, who I'd personally mentored, forwarded me the incident notes.
I didn't step in. Yet. Because Derek wasn't just failing, he was exposing himself. Every smug comment. Every misstep. Every moment he thought charm could replace accountability. I just kept doing my job. Approving funding for women-led teams. Sponsoring a new leadership pipeline for underrepresented staff. Revising policy around conflict of interest, especially for hires recommended by executives with personal ties. That one hit a little too close for him. But he didn't dare push back. Not yet. Until his mother showed up. Vivian stormed into the lobby one Friday morning, heels clacking like they could intimidate the marble beneath her. Security stopped her.
She demanded to see the woman who humiliated her son.
My assistant asked if I wanted her escorted out. I said no. I said, send her in. She burst through the door like a warning. I didn't flinch.
I was seated, back straight, pen in hand. She launched into her monologue, voice sharp, tone shrill. You think this little performance makes you powerful. You have ruined his future. You're petty, Naomi. A beggar dressed up in a pantsuit.
I stood slowly, walked around the desk, looked her in the eye. Vivian, if I wanted to ruin Derek's future,
I would have signed his termination papers yesterday.
She blinked. You can't. I can. I'm his superior.
But unlike you, I believe in earning consequences, not manufacturing them.
She sputtered.
You poured this entire mess over him.
No, I said. You poured soup on me. I responded with structure, policy, boundaries.
Something you clearly never taught your son.
Security appeared in the doorway. I nodded once.
Please escort Ms. Langston out. As she was led out, she shrieked, You'll regret this.
I smiled.
I already don't.
The door clicked shut. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt centered. Because I hadn't stooped to their level. I'd risen from it. And left them exactly where they tried to bury me. Derek. He came to my office that afternoon. Knocked. Didn't enter.
Just stood in the doorway, small in a way I'd never seen him. You didn't have to let her in.
I looked up. You're right.
But I needed her to see what control really looks like.
He nodded. Left. And from that day forward, he kept his head down.
While I kept building, not revenge, but legacy.
Because the power shift wasn't in who had the louder voice. It was in who no longer needed to raise theirs at all. Derek used to walk into rooms like he owned them. Now, he looked over his shoulder, checked his tone,
second-guessed his jokes. Because power isn't always taken. Sometimes it's surrendered, quietly, day by day.
And Derek, he was unraveling.
At first, he tried to overcompensate.
Late-night emails, buzzword-filled proposals.
A smile glued to his face so tightly, you could see the panic just behind it.
But excellence can't be faked. And Lanford O'King was a battlefield built for warriors. He was an actor playing at competence.
One afternoon, he interrupted a presentation Olivia was leading, something I specifically warned him about. He tried to correct her numbers in front of clients.
But the numbers were right. His were old.
The client, confused, looked to me.
I cleared my throat. Please disregard the interruption. Olivia's projections are accurate.
Mr. Langston's information is outdated, much like his approach.
The room chuckled.
Derek flushed, eyes down.
Strike one.
A week later, HR flagged a report. Derek had failed to disclose a personal relationship with a vendor he pushed for approval.
The vendor. A friend from college. Conflict of interest. Strike two. Then came the final blow. He submitted a performance memo he didn't write.
One of the junior analysts, Ava, had penned the proposal in a brainstorming session.
He lifted her work, changed the font, added his name. She saw it in the shared drive and came to me.
I'm not trying to cause drama, she said. But this was mine.
I believed her. Because I knew that tactic. I'd lived it. Strike three. The board scheduled a disciplinary review. I didn't even need to attend. But I did. I walked in wearing black, not for mourning, but for clarity.
Derek sat across the table, pale,
jaw tight. The head of HR presented the findings.
Unauthorized sourcing.
IP misappropriation. Policy violations. He didn't deny it.
He just said, I was under pressure.
Then he turned to me.
You made this happen.
I met his gaze. No. You made choices. I just chose not to cover them up. They asked him to step down, effective immediately. He stood, fists clenched. You were never better than me. I stood too. I didn't have to be.
I just had to stop dimming my light for your comfort.
He stormed out. The room exhaled. Someone clapped. I didn't smile. Because this wasn't joy. It was justice.
A woman once told she was, of no use, had just held a man accountable with nothing but facts, proof, and policy.
No yelling. No soup. Just truth, served at room temperature. Later that evening, I found a sticky note on my desk. From Ava. Thank you for believing me.
I want to be you one day.
I stared at it for a long time. Then pinned it to my wall. Because I didn't just dismantle a man's arrogance. I built space for women who would be overlooked, like I once was. And no one could pour shame over that. Not anymore.
They scheduled Derek's exit interview for Friday at Sham ke 4 baje, the hour when silence sinks deepest and humiliation echoes loudest.
He showed up late. No suit. No smile.
Just a defeated man in yesterday's shirt, trying to pretend this was all beneath him.
I was waiting in the conference room. Not because I had to be there. Because I chose to be.
HR opened the meeting with a rundown of the exit process, benefits, final paycheck, access revocations.
Derek didn't say much. Until I looked him in the eye.
Any feedback for leadership before you leave, Mr. Langston?
He stared at the table. Then smirked. You got what you wanted. I leaned forward slightly. What I wanted was a partner who respected me. What I got was a man who couldn't handle a woman building something he couldn't fake. His jaw tightened.
This place poisoned everything.
No, I said softly. This place revealed everything. Your mother didn't ruin you. I didn't ruin you.
You were never built to lead, only to borrow power. HR glanced between us, clearly uncomfortable.
I nodded at her. You can give us the room. She left. Now it was just the two of us. And the quiet truth sitting between us. He stood. You'll never find someone like me again. I stood too. I hope not. He blinked. So I walked to the window, hands folded behind me.
You asked me once why I didn't fight harder for us, I said. Why I walked away so easily after that night.
He didn't respond. The truth is, I wasn't silent because I was weak. I was silent because I was done. You and your mother mistook quiet for permission.
But I was just watching the door you opened, so I could close it behind me. He exhaled, bitter. You always thought you were above me.
I turned. I was above you, Derek.
I just lowered myself out of love.
He left without another word. No handshake. No apology. Just the sound of his shoes against the tile as he disappeared into a future that no longer included a shortcut to power. I sat alone for a moment afterward. Not to gloat, but to breathe. The same air I used to suffocate in now felt crisp. Clean. Mine. I opened my laptop and typed one final note in his employee file. Resigned under review. Unable to adapt. Leadership integrity compromised. I closed the tab. Then opened another, finalizing the launch of our Women in Command initiative. A leadership accelerator built to make sure no woman ever had to beg to be respected at the table she helped build. The world didn't need fewer Dereks. It needed more women who wouldn't stay quiet when they were disrespected. And I was done being quiet. Because I had found my voice. And she wasn't interested in revenge. She was interested in reign.
6 months later, I stood under stage lights, looking out at an auditorium filled with women, founders, students, executives, dreamers.
The keynote was mine. Not because I demanded it. Because I earned it. They introduced me as
Naomi Pierce, CEO, strategist, and the woman who redefined silence as strength.
I stepped to the podium in a tailored suit the color of midnight, more softness this time. Just shine. And steel. I adjusted the mic. Took a breath. Then began. They told me I had no use. That I was unworthy.
That love was conditional, and that power was out of reach.
They poured soup on me.
I poured foundation under me.
Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not mockery, recognition. The truth is, I didn't build an empire out of spite. I built it out of clarity.
Because once someone showed you what they really think of you, you're free.
Free to rise.
Free to stop shrinking. Free to stop making yourself small just to fit in their frame.
I saw women crying, nodding, holding hands.
I saw myself, 10 years ago, sitting in the back of a room like this, hoping someone would tell me it was okay to stop begging to be chosen.
So I said it now. You don't need their seat. You need your own table. Build it.
Burn the old one if you have to.
The standing ovation was thunder. But the moment that stayed with me was after.
A girl in her 20s came up to me, hands shaking.
Her name was Maya.
I was engaged, she said softly.
Until he told me I needed to quit my job after the wedding.
That I was too ambitious to be a wife.
I didn't leave. Until I read your story. You saved me. I hugged her. Because that's the real reward. Not the paycheck. Not the title. But the ripple. That echo of strength, carried from one woman to the next. Later that week, I sat at my desk in the corner office. A letter sat waiting. From Derek. It was short. You were always right. I wasn't ready for you. I confused control with confidence. I hope you keep building. Even without people like me. I smiled. Then fed the letter into the shredder. Not out of hate. But out of closure. Because I didn't need his guilt. I had my growth.
I looked around my office, filled with light, with laughter outside my door, with the sound of women I'd hired taking up space.
And I whispered to myself. They called me a beggar. But I was never asking.
I was becoming.
And now, I wasn't just at the top. I was above the mountain they tried to bury me under. Not because I was lucky, but because I finally understood. Worth was never theirs to give. It was mine to know.